sounded
You know,
particularly good.
I admit that the when I first was listening to you and you were doing that stuff that was more distorted, you know, pushing that stuff out. For a while, I thought you had a really bad sense of timing.
Mm-hmm.
Because with all the distortion, it was really hard to hear any precision to those,
Right.
and you were doing odd time signatures. But with that distorted sound, it sounded like you were just really fluctuate. Like I was like, does he not understand bars? Like because it sounded, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds freeform,
Yeah.
which is okay in its own context. But it was like.
Right.
The song, it's like there's no time. Like
That's
it's like,
funny because
is he slowing up, speeding? You
I
know,
have a much better sense of time than I do of pitch.
right? No, I've come to understand that you have a great sense of time. But in that context, I was just like, I don't think he knows how to play in rhythm.
Yeah.
Like there's no rhythm to what he's playing. Like if only he would just like lock down a rhythm, I could like get with it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that stuff was really out there.
Yeah. But it was really the distorted guitar that just, it was obfuscating obscuring rather the precision of the time.
Yeah.
So it just sounded sort of like, you know, it's like you're playing and then you do this little riff up there and it's like, that wasn't even in time with the rest of the song. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I first got to Spokane, really early when I got here, I had a gig down at Lux. Because that was the time when, you know,
Right.
like Isaiah would, I mean, he'd book anybody that walked in the door and said,
Right.
hey, can I play? And he'd be like, yeah. And so I went in and played and, like, you know, you know how it was. I mean,
Yeah.
playing to an empty room.
Yeah.
There were, you know, a handful of people.
At least it
there.
was a small room.
Yeah, it was
So
small.
when you have 3 people there, it actually felt okay.
Right, exactly. And he pulled me up afterward. And this is before I'd met you or Andy.
Yeah.
I hadn't met any of you yet. And he pulled me up after my little gig, and he's like, you know, I could hear what you were trying to do, but you know, you might want to slow it down and take some of the distortion off and like let me hear it, you know.
Right. And that was sort of my
in his very kind of warm, Isaiah kind of way, you know, because he had a way of handing out those pieces of advice in a very like gentle
mellow
kind
kind
of
of
way.
way. Yeah.
So I took it in the spirit that it was intended and ignored it. You know,
Right.
it's always good to ignore good advice.
Yes.
But no, after I satisfied my curiosity that I've gone past the limits of what people will hear.
Right.
Then I was like, okay, I can reel it back in. I've done my experiment and the results are not positive.
Right. You know, like Tim Reynolds, the guitar player who plays with Dave.
Yeah.
When they were before they were famous, but they were still like packing local clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And they had released, I think, their first album, and he had been playing with them some. He was never, you know, full time with them. But the crowd knew who he was, and they played a gig where his band had opened Tim Reynolds Trio, or TR3 they called themselves, and had opened for Dave's, and they had their own gig at Trax, and it was the big nightclub in town, and they were able to sort of bring in, you know, like the place was packed full of college kids who went to see Dave every week there.
Sure.
And it was like, hey, this is the guitar player from that group, and let's go see him. And, you know, Tim is probably the best guitar player I've ever seen live in my life. Like, he's really good. He's really good. He's one of the very few people, when you see him play, where you realize, here's a person who, if he hears something in his head, he can play it. Mm-hmm. And there's very few musicians who can really play everything they hear.
Right.
You know, every idea in their head. Like, I hear a zillion things I have no
and then we sit down
capability to play.
Ding, ding,
right.
Ding,
but he's one of those guys that he thinks it and it comes out through his fingers. And but
we hate him.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's also, like you, he's someone who really likes to like defy expectation and go outside the bounds and like push the boundaries of what is and isn't music even. Mm-hmm. And I remember being at this show where TR3 gets up there, the place is just packed, and they just light into the most experimental, feedback-ridden, completely inaccessible music, and everyone's just started like, then they just start, and then it turns into a frat party. Everybody's just talking and drinking, and they're up there like playing
making
this
noise,
crazy ass shit.
Yeah,
and it wasn't even like it was. I didn't even like it, and I liked stuff that was a little more out,
right?
But this was just like he's holding the guitar in front of them amp, like just getting tons of feedback and drones, and just way out. And I know he was doing it on purpose,
right?
Because he's the exact kind of guy who's like, oh, big crowd showed up expecting Dave,
poking fun at the frat shit,
yeah. So in that context, it was kind of awesome.
That's valid.
It was an awesome
show.
Valid
choice.
And I love, and I've always admired that ability to just be like, I don't give a fuck if you like it or not.
Right.
I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard for most of us, right? Because it's like, you want to be liked. One of the reasons we perform is because we want people to like us.
Right.
And that introduces this drive in us to conform musically in order for people to like us.
Right. Yeah, and it's tough because I'm definitely not one of those people who, like, there's this weird, I think it's a backwards mentality of a lot of people who like do this crazy experimental stuff, and it's almost like they think that the fewer people who like what they're doing is an indication of how awesome
right.
it is.
It's a more of a validation.
Yeah, and I've never fallen into that. I think that's bullshit.
Right.
I really do.
Right.
I think that's bullshit. It's like you don't go out and stand on a stage and make music in hopes that people won't hear you.
Exactly.
Anybody who says that is their motivation is full of shit.
Right.
They're lying.
Well, they're also the same people who will feel like there's an the same inverse relationship exists, such that popular music by default is horrible.
Right, which is also bullshit.
Because if 70 million people buy this album, it's got to be a piece of shit.
Right.
Which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's like, you can not like something, it doesn't make it a piece of shit.
It doesn't make it a piece of shit. Yeah, exactly. And just because, somebody has a small cult following doesn't mean what they're doing is good.
Right.
There might be, they might have a small following.
It might be, but not necessarily.
Maybe, but just the idea that appealing to a fewer number of people means you're artistically valid is absolute garbage. So I've never quite fallen into that.
Although it's kind of a seductive idea, because I do play a lot of empty rooms. Now I'm thinking...
What I meant to say
how amazing am I?
You are the best.
I mean, if I have
nobody listens to me.
If I have an audience of 0, I'm like the best in the freaking universe.
That's right. You've achieved the goal.